You're welcome to look at it.
Oh, good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the January 15th Planning Commission meeting. First thing we'll do is stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we do the roll call, please.
Moody?
here.
Reese?
Here.
Morissette?
Here.
Woolsey?
Here.
Hinsman?
Here.
Stiesel?
Here.
Tolan?
Here. And we'll have approval of the agenda meeting, or the agenda minutes from the November 6th meeting.
I move approval. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next move on to public comments. If there's anybody in the audience that have something to say, come on up. You know the routine.
Yeah.
Sign in. Let us know who you are.
My name is Ben Fox, 2529 Powell Avenue, North. No. I see Mann Valley is on the agenda. There was a 5-year lease with the Board of Regents for the 85 acres of the parcel, and also the other lease for the rest of the acreage is year 4 of the 5-year lease. So basically, the ag leases on all that parcel are up this year. And so as a farmer or anybody in ag, you kind of want to know if you're in plant, a FELF or something, whether or not that parcel will be together. So I've seen a couple concept plans. So it'd be good this year that, there was when they threw the building in there, it was basically right in the middle of the right of way or road. So it's hard for the farmer to drive around that building, and they're driving on county roads with manure and everything else. So it'd be good to get that concept plan and zoning kind of hammered out so that you don't have fields that are split, and they can manage their fertilizer and everything else over the year. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you guys come up with for the next year. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Anybody else in the audience? Okay. Next, we'll move on to consideration of an ordinance annexing certain territory from the town of River Falls to the city of River Falls. This is located on Cemetery Road in South Wasson Lane. And Andy will give us a little presentation on this.
Yeah, good evening. You may recall this parcel from last January. We looked at it when the Apostolic Church was seeking to annex, they were seeking to purchase what is shown as the SSS partnership and the James Scheffler properties, and then getting pulled along with it all was the Elrod properties with the mini storage. That deal kind of fell through last year, and since then we've gotten a new annexation request from the property owners, and so that's coming before you tonight to consider the future zoning for that if it's annexed. And I would guess I'll go read through my report, kind of skipping around a little bit. So the property owners have, at least the Scheffler and the SSS partnership property owners, have entered into a new purchase agreement with Bald River Properties. It's anticipated that Bald River will develop multifamily down the road, but we haven't received any concrete plans of that. It's just kind of been told to us over the phone. So we're expecting maybe 16 to 24 units based on the size of the parcels. I wouldn't expect much more than that. The annexation area contains 3 properties, totaling 4.73 acres. If annexed, the 2 would be developed that are currently vacant, but the mini storage property would remain the same. The proposed annexation area is at the intersection of Cemetery Road and South Wasson. This is the existing zoning. The adjacent parcels are residential in nature. We've got Knollwood to the east, which is single family, to the north. The zoning of Village Park Apartments is commercial, but it's residential use, and then Cuds Court is also residential, as is Red Cedar Estates. The future land use for the area is shown here. The orange is high density residential, which is Knollwood. And the higher level of density is the 2 apartment areas, and the red is commercial. So here, back to the zoning map. So we're proposing that this, if annexed, that we zone the property as R3 multifamily. It's currently zoned commercial, which is consistent with the future land use map. But given the surrounding land uses in both the city and the town, it makes sense for to make that a residential area. The petitioners for the annexation, they're amenable to the R3 zoning. The size and configuration of the vacant lots, it's not conducive really to commercial zoning for access reasons. We've had conversations with the city engineer, and it would not be very likely that we would be able to give them an access from Cemetery Road off of the SSS partnership. So any future development would have to have access off of Wasson. And then the existing mini storage, while it's not anticipated to be redeveloped at this time, if it were to in the future, it would make sense also to have residential in that area. So staff is recommending the Plan Commission recommend to council the ordinance that is included in the packet, which is authorizing the R3 zoning and suggesting annexation. Does anybody have any questions?
Brandy, when this came in front of us, or when this was being considered last time, there was an easement issue?
Yes.
Has that been resolved, or where is that at?
It still exists. So I think that the issue with the easement, it was kind of like right around where the property, the two are abutting each other. And it was an issue for the church because the church was going to be on the northern parcel, and then the parking was kind of going to be down here. And they really they wanted nothing to be cutting across their parking area. It wouldn't be very safe for kids, for example, walking to church from the parking lot. So they didn't want to move forward with it. But if it's going to be a residential, I don't think it's going to be quite as big of an issue because it's going to have the cross access for the Red Cedar Estates. So I think from a holistic point of view, having multifamily, you could have several buildings, maybe 2, one on the north side, one on the south side. So it would have a logical traffic pattern kind of going through.
Been cut through the Elrod property as well?
I'm going from memory here, but I think it's just south of the Elrod property. Do you remember, Amy? I don't think it went through Elrod.
Well,
But it was right underneath of Elrod, maybe.
Okay, so it's not an issue right now.
I wouldn't anticipate it. They would have had to have, informed the purchaser at that time. I mean, we made them aware of it last year before the sellers weren't aware that the easement existed. Now they do.
Right through there.
Okay, but my bigger point is the buyer is aware of it today.
Yeah, I would assume so. I guess I don't know that for sure.
Well, what I don't want to have happen is the buyer show up in a year and a half and say, well, now you got to make an arrangement for me because I can't build, because I got an easement I got to screw around with. I guess that's my bigger concern, is that full disclosures happened here.
So to this point, we've had limited conversations with the buyer. This application is through the sellers.
I understand.
So I cannot tell you that the buyer specifically knows about this parcel. I do not know that for a fact.
Okay, well, it's now in the meeting minutes of this meeting, so hopefully people will pay attention. L-rods are just coming along for the ride?
They have to, otherwise we'd have a donut hole situation, which is not permitted by
Oh, yeah, they'd be an
statute.
island.
Yep.
Having
Okay.
not been here, what type of easement is it?
It was a cross-access easement so the property just to the west, sorry, getting my east and west wrong, right here, the Red Cedar Estates came in many, many years ago, and it was originally supposed to be a multi-phased apartment complex. So we still have a vacant parcel here next to 65. So when that was going to develop fully, they were going to need to construct a road through that easement area in order to get to Wasson, to have 2 accesses for the number of units, so that it would be like a fire safety issue.
So they can't even give up that easement anyway.
It's my understanding that we are going to require it.
I would hedge that by we're going to, right now it's dependent on the future development to the west, right? We don't know what that will be. If it's a different use than a number of multifamily units like was suggested in the past, if it's a different use that doesn't require a secondary access, we can take a look at it at that time. But until we know what that property is going to develop as, it's in the developer's agreement. It's set as a stipulation there, so we're letting it lie and letting future property owners know that it exists, so.
You're talking about the property to the east of Red Cedar today.
Correct.
Right.
Excuse me. Okay. All right. Well, unfortunately, I've seen this show before, and I know how these end up sometimes, and that's why I'm asking the question.
Well, is there something that could be remedied, or that needs to go back and put into the language to indicate that?
I'm not sure, other than buyer beware, that there really is much we can, or probably should be doing either, to be honest with you. It's not our job to do that. I just see this as a potential pitfall down the road, but hopefully the buyer is aware of it, and I mean, there's going to be a closing, so theoretically the title work should be presented to them, and they should be able to discern that. I just want to make it clear to the end buyer that they shouldn't come to us down the road and say, well, now I've got this easement and I can only do this, and that doesn't fit with whatever we envision on that property. That's my bigger concern. So, but again, to your point, Mike, I don't know that there is anything we could or should be doing, other than just making it making it public.
But like you're saying with the closing and everything, that should all be.
It should be.
It should all be part of the.
It should theoretically be.
It should all be part of the paperwork
Taken care
itself.
of. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns, comments for Brandy? Thanks, Brandy.
You're welcome.
So I'll entertain a motion on this to pass it along to the council.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we approve an ordinance annexing certain territory in the town of River Falls to the city of River Falls, Wisconsin.
I'll second that.
There again, any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we'll have some updates. Amy will give us a couple updates on Mann Valley and shoreland zoning and planning commission priorities, review updates.
Good evening. We'll tag team a little bit. I'll take this one. Sam will take the next one, and then I'll be back up. How's that?
Sam doesn't get up in front of us enough. It's a good experience for you, Sam.
So we put the next couple items on the agenda this evening to hopefully bring the whole commission up to speed. We had a meeting last October, I believe, but with Plan Commission and Council. It was a workshop, and a number of you weren't able to attend that. So we wanted to provide updates so that, again, everybody was on the same page. So apologies to those of you that were able to attend. This might be a bit of a repeat. So I've got Mann Valley concept plan up first for you. The staff did a bit of work last year to come up with a concept plan for Mann Valley. So we've got a few slides here. I did put a graphic in front of you that you can take a look at as well. We'll just walk through this quickly, and you can let me know if you have any questions as we go. Just a bit of history, a couple slides on that, the planning that we did last year, the concept, and then a bit about the market analysis. So it was back in 2011 that the city first started purchasing acreage out in Mann Valley, purchased the majority of the acres, then in 2013, bringing up to the city-owned property of just over 325 acres. In 2016, then we did go forward with the annexation that brought that property, or the majority of it, into the city, created the TID for Winfield Solutions out there on 5 acres as well. This may be a concept plan that you've seen. This is the one that we'd been using up until this point, that kind of gave some rough acreages in case we had interest in the properties. As I mentioned last year, we did hire MSA Professional Services along with Addy Advantage out of Madison to work with us to provide some concept plans and a market analysis for the property. So you can see here who worked on this project last year. So you've got the concept before you. I'll just kind of walk through some of the details in that. So it provides greater than 214 acres for both office or light industrial manufacturing uses. You can see that there's 5 different lots that includes 96 acres. And lot 5, specifically, 96 acres. Lots 6 and 7 can combine to 74 acres. So one of the main goals with this project was to be able to provide some very large contiguous parcels of property out there, right? From what we have learned and heard, those large parcels are non-existent west of here in the Twin Cities. So we believe that this is going to be a priority for some of those larger corporations that are looking for the bigger parcels. We did include some mixed-use commercial or medium to high-density residential areas, 16 to 39 acres, depending how it ends up, and about 27 acres of low-density residential. We did leave the current school district-owned property as an institutional use, and there is just about 63 acres for conservancy. You'll notice on some of those uses, obviously, there's 16 to 39 acres. Things are able to kind of ebb and flow. We wanted to have that space within the project, depending on what uses come forward. But yet we wanted to be able to show those large lots what potential was out there for other uses in the area. So if you focus in on the roads on your map, you can see the north-south road is white, and then there's the road coming in from the northwest, on the northwest side, that's white. Those are the 2 roads that we believe will definitely be built at some time. Then you'll see some other dashed lines along your map. Those are potential possibilities. So especially when you look at lot 5, that's a concept of where the road can go depending on what user comes in there. The reason there's the short road from the west, and if I look close, I think it's called Road B. You'll notice the drainage area that runs along the west side of the north-south road. Road B allows parcels 1, or lots 1 and lot 4, to potentially have access from Road B so that they don't have to cross the drainage area to the east if they don't want to. So that's why that road is in there as a more definite road. So we're anticipating the roads are going to be constructed incrementally as the build-out begins, and that things will start from the south and move to the north. Obviously, the site still needs sewer and water infrastructure. this is a little bit about Road A, so the main sewer and water will come up Road A. There is going to be a need for a lift station along Division at that point as well. We talked a bit about the stormwater area on the north, but you can see the green traveling all the way down through for stormwater conveyance. Again, just about 62 acres. They would primarily be outlots. The place that we did talk about that alternatively is up at Lot 1 and Lot 4. So those could be fully owned by a corporate park with green space stormwater conveyance on the east side of both Lots 1 and 4. That could go either way. Could be city-owned stormwater, could be private-owned stormwater conveyance, if that makes sense. Any questions on the land use information? If not, I'll keep.
You mentioned a lift station, it would be just, that's just kind of a common, that would be like what we've done in other parts of the city, and that gets funded through impact fees and that kind of thing, so.
Our stormwater, I mean, our water sewer fees and our
Yep. Okay.
TIF as well, probably some.
But the terrain isn't in any particular way that it makes it more difficult. I mean, it's just, it would be, I mean, it's been that way. So.
Yeah, no, the city engineer has taken a close look at this to make sure that water and sewer was going to be able to flow through the property. So he's pretty firm on that being able to happen with the need of the lift station.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many years down the line do you expect this to be full?
Full?
Let's say 80%.
Well, if history is, you know, we've scheduled out even for Sterling Ponds, how many years? Did we say 10 years?
10 years.
And we have 3 lots left?
Yeah.
I mean, so it's been coming faster than we typically plan for. I don't know that we have a end date on this one. I will tell you that, I mean, we're not looking to move on this quickly unless there is a development large enough to be able to fund the sewer, water, and road infrastructure to get things started on that south end. So it would need to be a very large user at this point in order to get things moving.
But it sounds like lot 1, 4, 6, and 7 probably will be in demand. That's the large lots.
5.
5?
You know, in 5, you know what I mean?
Right.
Be larger.
Yeah.
I think we had, without getting too over the line, we had some interested parties last fall, a large interested party. The mayor's choking over here because I'm probably saying something I shouldn't be. They came and looked at it. We were not ready for them to come. We told them it would be probably 12 to 18 months before we could be prepared to come. They didn't decide to come here anyway. They ended up deciding to go to another community that was a better fit for them. But we need to get this going, because if we don't have it, they will move on.
Mhm.
You know, it's one of those field of dreams projects, as I
Right.
call it. If we don't, you know, we build it and they will come.
As long as we have that available, we might as well use it.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
It's like Amy said, there's not, you can't find big areas like this that are ready to be built on anywhere anymore.
Next to a quality city like this.
Well,
That's
part
what
of
you
the
mean,
city.
right?
I have a question. What is the problem with being close to those ponding areas? You said if they didn't want to be crossing over the ponding area, if you have a road going over it, why would a developer not want to go in there?
Specifically on Lot 1, for example, is that where you're?
In Lot 4? or-
Okay, even on
or
Lot
maybe
4?
Lot 6, I can't read it.
having a
Lot-
road in a different spot?
No, you said On 1 and 4, they might like that because they don't have the ponding interfering.
Correct.
Okay,
So if they're
so
going
what
to
is
build
the-
an access road to their property, either on Lot 1 or Lot 4, starting on the east and going west into their property,
They
they're
don't
going
have
to
to
have
deal
to
with a...
cross that stormwater conveyance, which is going to mean more engineering and infrastructure.
Right,
So
now I get
that
it.
road would allow them to access it both north or south, and they wouldn't have to deal with that.
Thank you.
Yep. So with this project, we did work with Addy Advantage. They did a bit of a market study on both Wisconsin and Minnesota sites. So the average price per acre in both states is about $35,000. They collected a bunch of data from the Twin Cities market, and like I had mentioned earlier, much of that acreage is in about the 20 to 30 acre range that's available currently. So one of their recommendations was the best practice to list both small acreages and the larger acreages. So for Lot 5, for example, we would list it as a 96-acre parcel. We would also list all of the smaller parcels within it, so that all of the options are out there for corporations coming and looking to the city. So basically, their market study was that we've got a desirable location, we have some larger parcels that aren't necessarily available in the immediate area, so we should have a good property to market here, so.
Would there be any improvements like to radio out to the freeway? I see there's like a cul-de-sac there now shown. Roundabout, yeah. Out to, that's a 2-lane road for truck traffic.
Yeah, I could potentially see that in the future, but I don't know that's in our current plans for upgrades to radio.
My understanding is that radio is going to get upgraded at least to a center turn lane, and they were going to broaden out the shoulders this year. Am I making that up?
I don't know.
I thought I had heard that.
Done it last year.
Yeah, I think Radio Road is what it's gonna be for a while.
Okay.
As far as the roundabout they have here, I think that'll depend on if we have that, if you see on the map where we have that extra road coming in from there.
Well, Powell?
Yeah, if we
Powell
have,
comes in now.
if we have that in the new industrial
Oh,
park,
oh,
you know what I
okay,
mean?
Yeah.
Road
that-
A,
where-
Potential
yeah.
B?
Yeah,
Road A.
same with down in, what is that? Road that-
Radio.
Glover Road would be the same way.
Yeah.
Any other questions so far?
Next item?
Yep.
It's minimized.
Good evening, everyone. So following what Amy said about the meeting we had a few months ago where we took a bus around and several people were unable to attend, this is coming from that as well. We're here to talk about the shoreland setback, which is in place to protect our stream corridors, but there's some things that we've found that are worth discussing in this upcoming year. So tonight, our goal is just to give you kind of a heads up of what the project will entail. We're not looking to solve anything tonight. It's just kind of a refresher of what is in place currently and what the issues are. So our shoreline setback ordinance is basically 3 zones, and the permitted uses vary by zone, and the width varies. Generally, it's more restrictive the closer you get to the river, but the only thing that's important to know for tonight is that you can't build any structures or have any pavement within these 3 zones. Altogether, you're looking at, 125 feet to 175 feet total or more, generally found throughout the city, depending on how steep the slopes are, how big the floodplain is, a variety of factors, as it's currently written. So this is one of the projects that's on our work plan that Amy will be discussing more about tonight. And it's become kind of a barrier to infill development, which the city has made a commitment to pursuing. And we'll see in these maps why that is. It's also a good time to clean up our ordinance. There's a few language tweaks that should be made at this time that we're not going to get into tonight. Because the DNR is currently reviewing city shoreline ordinances following a policy change. They just finished up counties and now they're moving on to cities. So the timing is good to get this done. We also do not have a reference to state law within our ordinance, which is likely an issue with the DNR. So that's one thing we'll address too with this project. So here is an image of South Fork. It's the handout that I also gave you because I want to point out a few things that might be easier to see on paper than in a screen. The three colors are the three zones, and the entire width of the shaded area is basically places you cannot build if you were to build something new. There's a lot of legal non-conforming structures already within that space. So this is Main Street to the right. And then if you look at this lot line up here, that is the right-of-way for Vine Street. So as you can see, a lot of these properties are entirely or mostly within the shoreline setback. So if you were to pursue infill development here, you're kind of out of luck unless you build exactly what's there already. Zooming in on one specific property we looked at during that bus tour, this is 641 South Main, which is currently being advertised as a commercial site, although it's zoned R1 currently. But you can see the three zones encroach over halfway into the property. And there is one rule where you can take the average setback of an existing building that's within the setback if it's within 200 feet of your property. So for example, this house over here is within 200 feet. You can take the average of that building's existing setback and then the minimum setback. And in this case, that's how we came up with 118 foot. So this is the average setback. If you were to go that route, that requires approval from the city. But if you think about it over time, if everyone is getting approval to do this average setback, the line of buildings will gradually come closer and closer to the river over time if you're constantly splitting the difference. So that's seems kind of counterintuitive when you look at the goal of the width of the buffer to begin with. We just finished the Kinney Corridor project, and that recommended reviewing the shoreline ordinance and amending it if necessary for performance of the shoreline buffers, which it's a little different in this situation where these downtown parcels were platted quite a while ago, far before the shoreline setback was written. And, we don't want to necessarily bulldoze our historic downtown because it's within a certain width of the river, but there's several angles to consider when looking at this ordinance. So are there any questions at this point?
So Sam, if that property right now is vacant, they scraped it clean.
Yep.
And we're hoping for some infill there. And I know we don't want to start the slippery slope of putting in these things, but I think in this case, I mean, we've got to do something to encourage some development within reason there. Have we had any development requests at all for that parcel, or any conversation with anybody yet?
We haven't had any specific development requests, but we have had multiple conversations with the property owner. So the property owner is fully aware of what their options are.
Okay. And then obviously, if we get into, let's just use property, the 121 on the map. If they came in and wanted to build a deck or do something, how would the existing structure with the shoreland overlay now impact that? Can they do anything like that?
At this point with decks, we're basically saying if there's gaps between the planks that the water can filter through and you don't pave underneath the deck, it's not considered impervious, but
But any other improvements? What about a
like an expansion or
season porch or, something, expansion to the house? We're putting the brakes on that, I assume?
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay.
How are you measuring? Are you measuring from the middle? of
from the edge of from the margin of the stream. So
Okay. But what if that fluctuates over time?
it does.
So, not that much
No.
now, but as time goes on, I mean, and when you do that, I guess it would seem to me you would want to just find a middle of the stream and
Right.
do it from there, and then maybe have some variance from there.
Mhm.
But it is, like the mayor says, I understand that it doesn't change a lot, but over time, there could be, it could actually, I imagine, shrink.
Yep.
Or if, from different, drought, or from different ways that the water is flowing and being consumed elsewhere. So that's just how crossed my mind is. How
Yeah,
you wanna
that's
measure it.
a good consideration. Whoever created these layers or these zones way back, it follows exactly what the code says, but I don't think there's anything in there that.
So the standard is the ordinary high water mark, which is set by the DNR as well and used throughout the state.
Okay.
So those are set by the state. It's not the high, it's not the low, it's what they consider the ordinary. I assume our GIS system is set up with that ordinary high water mark. It's the definitions in the code. Yeah.
I believe that's exactly where this really light blue is. That data comes straight from ordinary high water mark, which I imagine will change with the dam removal too. So
Have any of those homeowners had any issues recently with water?
this is, are you talking like flooding in basements and that sort of thing? Not that I know of. This is pretty high up compared to where the river is.
Pretty steep.
This is just a few blocks down from the swinging bridge, so it's quite a drop off at this
It's almost
point.
like a canyon down.
Right,
through there.
right.
If you go to the east through campus, I know there's signs on those parking lots that say this area could flood rapidly, so you don't have to go that far until that starts becoming a consideration. And I don't know that UWRF has to follow these, do they? If they're building a new building?
High water mark? I bet they do.
I would think
They'll, yeah, with the high water mark they would, but,
DNR shoreland, they would.
okay.
And terrain really doesn't make a difference on this, because it's the same whether these properties are, are line of sight to the river, or if they're up on a.
Well,
It does.
the setback can increase based on certain factors, so.
Okay,
steep
you did say
slopes
that, so,
Is one
Mhm.
of them.
okay. And
So steep slopes, floodplain, and then stream order are the big three that determine how much additional width gets put to that middle zone.
I guess I didn't see what the practice is for that, or I might have missed something in that, or it's just in general, you're just stating that.
Yeah, there are specific calculations, but we didn't want to get that far into detail tonight
Because
because,
we're at a high level here.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
we're just saying,
It's like looking through my desk.
do we want all, we're just raising the question, do we want all sorts of parcels to be completely covered by the setback versus how do we still protect the stream while doing that?
So this, again, really is to let you know that we know that there's some technical issues with our ordinance that need to be corrected. But from a broader perspective of development within the city, I mean, again, this very strict shoreland ordinance was put in place to protect the Kinney. Is that where we want to be? Or are there considerations for development along our rivers is really the question that we're going to pose to you later in the year. So we're giving you plenty of time to begin pondering that scenario.
Because our guidelines, or whatever you want to call them, are a lot stricter than the DNRs, right?
They are.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is gonna be,
Might be, Go ahead.
I'm sorry, the challenge is gonna be, I mean, this part in particular, the steep slope there, you can't really tell from the map where it starts, but it probably starts about where that 118-foot line is. The 118-foot line is about where it starts to really drop off dramatically. The challenge really is that build an arc if it starts to come up over that, because, we're all in trouble. It's not, that property will never have true shore, what we're really trying to protect from
Right.
true shoreland. In my opinion, that property and those properties along there are not gonna have that. Now, that doesn't mean I want to cantilever over a, 50-foot expansion out over the river, but, some of the 175-foot and part of the 150-foot setback seems to be a little too extreme in this particular case. Which we don't like ambiguity in our ordinances.
Well,
That doesn't
there's
work.
that.
But I think the answer is it depends.
It does, and we can get into some of those details again. I mean, there's some vegetative prescriptions in our ordinance to allow, part of the width of that ordinance is to allow that vegetation there so that, there's infiltration before it gets to the Kinney, so we're not creating erosion and we're not allowing property owners to cut that vegetation close to the Kinney. So we can get into all of those weeds later this year.
I just don't want to make it onerous for a property that I think has real potential to be developed. And again, I don't want to go to one extreme either, but it seems right now we're too far to the other extreme, in my opinion. But we'll have to see
And to go
what
on the
some-
other side, it would be, having variance after variance or
Well,
those kind of
exactly.
thing. And so we
Yeah.
want to dial in kind of
Yeah.
a middle ground of that.
Because variances become onerous to the property owners, and they become a struggle and a challenge, and if you keep making variances, then do you really have an ordinance? Well,
Right.
then we're back to square one, so more to come, I think, but that'd be interesting.
Is some of this to save the banks also? Because it's so steep that if you start building close to the banks, that some of the banks will start coming down? Erosion?
The erosion factors in there, yeah. That's what the vegetation prescriptions are as well, yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Well, thank you for listening, and hopefully we can all go home and start brainstorming.
Okay, so I wanted to give you just a preview of let's go to doc. What we've got coming up this year. So I put, this is going to be pretty small for the folks at home, but I put this document in front of you just to kind of give you an idea of our major projects for our department. So I put, you'll see off to the far right, I've got some acronyms. Hopefully those make sense to you. PC Plan Commission, PAB Park Board, HPC, Board of Appeals, Common Council, BID, and then just an internal column as well. So just to kind of give you an idea of the committees that it would touch, or whether it's just an internal project for us as well. And I will reserve the right to change that staff lead support column as we go along and are managing the projects. But you can get, again, an idea if you take a look at the Plan Commission column, what's probably going to be in front of you this year. If I just run down those, give you a couple sentences on each, does that sound fine?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so University Development Plan. One of the strategic goals for the city this year is infill development. So this is one of those projects to take a closer look at the Cascade Main Street areas close to where the university is putting millions and millions of dollars in redevelopment on campus. And how can River Falls as a community expand on those development opportunities and take advantage of them. So that's a planning project that staff will be working on this year. PUD ordinance modifications. This primarily is a modification to allow PUDs in our commercial districts. Currently, they are only allowed in our residential districts. So that will be the change that we'll be looking to shift to this year. Brandy's working on that draft, and we should have it to you in a couple months. Shoreland updates we just talked about. The impact fee internal review to give staff a better idea of where we're at with impact fees. And you'll notice down just a few places we'll also do a workshop with council on both impact fees and capital costs. We're currently in the midst of a capital cost study, so we'll have lots of information to provide you at that workshop. Again, we've got new staff on board across the way, so getting all of us in tune to what we're doing with impact fees and capital costs, where we need to go in the future, and then pass that information along to you as well. The trends report used to be an annual report that came out of our department and covered everything from population to economic development. We've switched that over to a 3-year annual report. Sam's currently working on that now, so you'll be seeing that in the near future as well. Cooperative agreement implementation, that's an optimistic one, right? So assuming the cooperative agreement is passed by the council, that will be a project that we will then dive in and work on to implement that with the town of Kinnickinnick. A couple plan commission workshops in here. We talked about the impact fees and capital costs. Probably also a TIF-TID workshop for you guys. A Kinney corridor implementation, and also cooperative boundary agreement implementation, assuming again that goes forward. The housing fee study report is something that the legislature passed last year, and staff is going to be on a webinar next week to learn, or next month to learn more about that. Decide if we're going to go forward with that legislative mandate, or if we would potentially go for a mandate waiver on that project. So there'll be more to come on that one. Jumping down then into economic development. Downtown alley upgrades. So there is a line item approved in the capital budget for this year to do a partnering project with downtown businesses, if they're interested, to upgrade some of the alleys in the downtown. So staff will be working with those downtown businesses, the bid board, and probably the chamber as well, to talk to businesses, see if there's interest on their part in partnering with the city to upgrade those alleys. And the power plant project, we've got a couple of staff that are leading that up, taking an in-depth look at the power plant, its state currently, and what needs to happen to it to make it a more productive property within the city. We're not talking full redevelopment of this at this point, but taking a look at some of the infrastructure needs that need to happen, if there are contaminations, if there are grants, some investigations on that project. So those are the items that are in your column. Feel free to peruse the other columns as well. We'll be taking this to Park Board this week, and our other commissions as well.
Excellent.
Okay.
Let's see. Next planning commission will be February 5th. Right here. That's about
Want to
it.
hear about the development updates?
Oh, I'm sorry. Jeez. forget.
And we've been busy the past couple months with the school district. Oh, it's on. Can you not hear me?
There you go.
Okay, sorry. We've approved all of the school district properties except for 2. We're still looking at West Side, but we're getting pretty close to finishing that up, as well as the Montessori. And the Glen Park site plan, we're reviewing that. We're waiting for revisions. And then we have another multifamily project proposed up in Sterling Ponds. It's going to be across the road from Sterling Heights, the townhomes up there. We also approved Anchor Paper. I think that was in November. And then we're expecting to get the depot and the food pantry projects coming in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Yeah, well, next planning commission, February 5th for everybody.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. No, it's off.